Welcome everybody. It is the 4 o'clock hour here at the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center on GoLocal Live. Welcome. We've got one of our candidates for governor, Paul Roselli, running as a Democrat, challenging
challenging both the establishment and whoever else shows up at, in the next moment. You never know.
Big group of folks who have already announced or may be announcing for governor.
Sure.
There's somewhere around, I think, 6 or 7 folks have already declared. We're assuming Governor Raimondo will run for re-election. Then there's a couple question marks. Let's talk about it. How do you break through at the beginning of this and get name recognition out there and tell people who you are and what you want to do for Rhode Island?
Sure. So the biggest thing for me, and you said it, is name recognition. But I've established that over the past almost 20 years or so in the environmental movement, with a lot of working on a lot of nonprofit organizations throughout the state. I've got good name recognition there and know all of those folks as well. The challenge is going from that type of world to a much bigger world to take it to a statewide effort, and that's where the challenge is. Over the past 4 or 5 years, I've worked as a lobbyist in the State House. I know that temper and that tone, and I know some of the players in that organization, and some of the workings of how to make things work for Rhode Island. And I've worked as a grassroots organizer for the past 3 years, particularly on this power plant issue that is in the northwest corner of Rhode Island. So take all that together, and it's a challenge, but the word is getting out. It's absolutely getting out. A lot of events, a lot of media coverage. GoLocal Live, you folks here have been fabulous, very supportive of all the candidates, and certainly of me too.
No, we appreciate that. Let's talk about Invenergy a little bit. I think that's really, from a statewide standpoint, where you've kind of punched through and people have really gotten to know you. It's a big project. This is I think it was originally announced at about a $600 million, but it's climbed from there.
It's climbed to $1 billion project.
It's a $1 billion project, and in some ways, I think when it was first announced, before anybody took a look at it, like, oh, somebody wants to invest $1 billion. I think it was $670 million at the onset. Oh, they want to come and invest a lot of money into Rhode Island, and Governor Raimondo was a strong supporter of it.
Sure. Way back August 1st, 2015, that memorable day when the governor said, and I quote, and I can absolutely quote this verbatim, she said, "We will do everything we can to make sure you're successful here." It took us a little while to get going, but starting in October and November, we kicked off a statewide campaign to make sure that we could both delay and defeat this. And so far, we're headed towards that goal.
And the opposition is focused on a couple issues: the environmental impact, and that effort to reinvest in fossil fuels, right? I mean, it's a duality of issues.
So I want to be super clear on this, because it's taken on a slightly different turn of events. This has now become a jobs and economy issue. You got to think, and I'm happy to talk ad nauseum about this, but think where we were 3 years ago and what we could have accomplished in those 3 years if we had not devoted all this time, energy, and money and state resources to working on this project, putting in all the time and effort at the PUC, spending enormous amounts of money through not just the town of Burrillville, but a lot of municipalities. Think of where we could be. When I calculate the numbers, there was $3 billion worth of jobs creation, materials, services that could have been created in those 3 years for alternative fuels, alternative energy, both wind and solar. Also dealing with all the siting issues. Only now in the past 4 or 5 months are we dealing with the siting issues. If we had thought about this 3 years ago and not put an entire state on the verge of going over this fossil fuel cliff, if we had put all of our resources and had somebody in the top leadership position to actually move the economy and jobs to something different, we would be in a much different place today.
It is an amazing, you know, I worked my early part of my career both for John Chafee and then for some governors here on environmental policy. And, you know, the desire was we wanted to replace fossil fuels when the economics of wind and solar crossed over, that there'd be an inflection point. And now we're at that point in which wind and solar are very affordable, you know, only going to get cheaper, totally commercialized, but yet we're still dancing with a major new energy plant. Is there a lack of leadership? I don't hear anybody talking about this at a state level. No legislative leader, no governor, no members of the congressional delegation. It seems strange because all of them on paper are environmentalists. What's the issue here?
Yeah. So one of the things I hope separates me from the rest of the increasing herd and pack is that I absolutely want to talk about these issues. Green jobs, energy efficiency programs. Energy efficiency is the first fuel when it comes to saving energy and getting us off of fossil fuels. I'm not shying away from these issues. These are big issues. The recent talking sessions that the Rhode Island Foundation has been doing all throughout the state. I've been to 2 of them. I'm going to go to 2 more. Believe it or not, one of the issues that comes up is the natural beauty and the environment of our state.
Listen, when the rankings come out, ranking Rhode Island as a business environment, Forbes, Fortune, Inc., it really doesn't matter. The one category we always consistently is quality of life, quality of living. That's where we're always in the top 10. It is our natural beauty.
It is our natural beauty. And those things need to be protected. I was blown away, and not just because of the location, but 2 sessions that I was in, they talked about the Blackstone River. I've been working in environmental stuff for a long time, and to go to a place, and I won't give the names of the cities or towns, but these are interior towns that don't even know where the Blackstone River is. Sorry, but that's what they mentioned. They mentioned the Blackstone River as being underutilized and something we need to protect.
Well, and I'll tell you what, I worked for John Chafee and worked on the Blackstone Valley Heritage Corridor designation 1987-ish. And I remember we did a tour in boats down the Blackstone. And Dean Starkman was the reporter. Providence Journal ultimately went to the Wall Street Journal and wrote for us later on. He's now lives in Hungary. But he came on that trip, and I think everyone was blown away. This is, 30 years ago.
It is pretty amazing.
How incredibly beautiful the Blackstone was 30 years ago. Now it's 1,000 times cleaner, and so much of the mill complexes have been transformed into residential. It's a beautiful place and an unutilized
wonderful
resource.
Location. There is only one restaurant that has an outside balcony that overlooks the Blackstone River, and on any given summer day or a warm day between May and September, that place is packed with people.
Well, let me go to one issue. We do seem to be buttressing into this, and we're seeing it in a lot of places as the economy's improved a little bit. We're still trailing the rest of the country. But are we entering into some delusional NIMBYism? And I'm not speaking about that, but we now have folks trying to block solar projects, wind projects, and at some point we need a comprehensive energy strategy. And we will scare away capital, we will scare away developers if every time you try and do anything in Rhode Island, you walk away banging your head saying, hey, listen, I tried to bring a good project here. Talk a little bit about that. How do we get a hold of that?
So we do need a comprehensive energy program, and I'm on those committees. Unlike some of those unlike some of the other candidates who are on there, I'm actively participating in those stakeholder meetings and those boards and study commissions, both regarding the Energy Facilities Siting Board, the siting of some of the solar and wind projects, what it means to actually be an energy project in Rhode Island, small hydro projects, solar panels on roof, what does that mean for the grid? Also the public utilities, there are 2 public utilities in the state of Rhode Island. One is in the northwest corner of Rhode Island, Pasco, Rhode Island. And is there a way to mold all of that as for a comprehensive plan? I think the answer is absolutely. And I think we're going to find over the next few months both the Energy Facility Siting Board legislation, the stakeholders legislation for siting of these, that the comprehensive approach it will give two things. One, it'll relieve and give a lot of relief for municipalities who are just struggling with this because they're, as you say, they're butting heads.
And it's a little worrisome. Yeah. I don't think it's great planning across Rhode Island that these cities and towns then react and create a moratorium. Because if you create a moratorium, listen, we're going to create a moratorium against low-income housing. Yeah. We're going to create a moratorium against group homes. We're going to create a moratorium. You can literally zone your way and shift all the burden into other cities and towns.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in getting people together and talking about it. One of the things we've been doing over the last several months is holding these listening sessions all throughout the state. And they've been very, very effective. They're also giving people an opportunity to speak. Yeah. What I found very surprising, even today, here we are, social media, 2018, lots of different ways of getting the message out. People still feel they're not being heard. Yeah. People still don't know where the money is going in terms of our budget. People still feel they're disconnected from state government. And that's translated into look at our voting records and our voting, people who get out to vote. Very low numbers. Special election in Pawtucket.
Oh my God! 6% of the registered voters.
6% of the registered voters in Pawtucket came out. Granted, it was a special election, but still.
Even so, you can't get much lower than that.
Can't get much lower than that.
Putin gets out like 100% of the vote in
but wait,
in
that's
Russia.
A gunpoint and incentives.
They all show up.
They all show up. All right.
Let's talk about the race. Listen, races have changed and transformed. It used to be how much money could you raise to buy how much TV. Well, whether you like him or not, Donald Trump proved you don't need to be on TV. You can win states on social media campaigns.
And with a message.
And with a clear message.
And with a clear message.
So you're going around right now, you mentioned before we came on, you're doing about 10 events on average.
About 10 events a week at least, probably more, but after 5 or 6, I kind of blur out as to where I'm going next.
And what are you hearing? Not just about how wonderful a candidate you are, we'll get to that in a moment, but what are you hearing about sort of, we used John Della Volpe from Harvard to do our polling. It's one of the top pollsters in the country. And, the big question in every public poll is right track, wrong track. And again, Rhode Island came out wrong track. And those numbers sort of mirrored what the governor's approval ratings were. She was at 34%, 6% excellent, 28% good. A low number for an incumbent governor. Sure. What are you hearing as you go around the state?
So just to be clear on those numbers haven't changed since our governor was elected way back in 2014. The amount of votes that the governor got was about that. It was about 30-something.
She was right at 40.
Yeah, right
at the statewide.
39, 40%.
Yeah.
And here we are 4 years later, and those numbers, either approval ratings or who might vote for, are very low too. So what I'm hearing throughout the state is that there's a disconnect. We have a governor here who spends most of her time outside of the state raising funds for something, not really quite sure what. Maybe some.
I think it's re-election. I'm like, she's good at it.
She's good. Our governor's good at raising money. That's correct. Who some of the donors are is questionable, but that's another show.
Well, I think that's fair game. I think anytime anybody's running, who's supporting them and who's not.
And I think that's fair game. Absolutely fair game. And one of the reasons I'm in this game, I'm running, is because way back last year, I looked at just where those funds were coming from, and a lot of those funds were coming from the very people that we were trying to fight in terms of this power plant in northwestern Rhode Island. And at that point, I said enough. But that's what I'm hearing when I go throughout the state. There's this feeling of not being supported, not being listened to, and being ignored.
So tell me something she's done well.
Our governor, I voted, I'll be the first to admit it. Matter of fact, I will be the first to admit it, that I voted for our governor as treasurer. I voted when Gina Raimondo ran for treasurer, and I voted because I wanted a woman in that office. And I thought at the time that was the right person for that job. being a woman was something I wanted to see in my lifetime, both in the state level and in the federal level, nationwide. In terms of what good she has done, I think that in itself, showing that anybody, whatever gender roles you have, whatever.
So her big plus is she's a woman.
Her big plus is that she won.
Yeah. And
then she won as a woman, and that's the big plus here. And I don't feel that that there's a disconnect here. We all recognize that. We all supported that right from the beginning. That was one of the things that we wanted to make sure that our state was the first to have, in our state anyway, when we had a woman as governor. Over the last 3 years.
She hasn't done anything. Nothing?
No, that's not true. But over
give her a one. Give her one win.
Sure, one win is our construction trades, and that has certainly been a plus for the state. Not a big plus, and if you look at the numbers in terms of actually numbers of people who are employed in the heavy industry, not the soft industries, not the remodeling,
the
installation,
and road works, those two combined.
Yeah, the cranes in the air, the new construction.
The crane.
The crane
we have
in the
one
air.
crane. Yeah.
The construction along 295. Not a big fan of that complex in 295.
Yeah. The Citizens Bank.
The Citizens Bank. Mostly the parking lot. The parking lot's probably bigger, or the parking structure is probably the biggest thing in that whole campus. But and that little monument right in front of 295 with that big glaring light, it's just too bright at night. It blinds me. So that I can push towards the governor. I can say, absolutely, she sided up to the construction trade. They responded. They were able to come to some understanding, some meaning of just how to make things work in Rhode Island in terms of reducing some of the regulation, moving us towards that type of building trades. And it's happened. The new construction along the river here, right near the State House, the crane in the air,
apartment complex over there. Joe Palino's projects, Wexford's down there. There's some stuff getting built.
There's some stuff
let's jump over to the lieutenant governor's race. It's already we're going to use the term frothy battle between Representative Aaron Ruggenberg and incumbent Dan McKee. Mm-hmm. Do you have a preference in that race?
I like them both.
You like them both. You're going straight down the middle.
No, I like them both. I've worked both with Dan and with Aaron over these many years, both in the legislature and with Dan McKee, both when he was mayor of Cumberland and now that he's a lieutenant governor. On the plus side, Aaron has the environment to his name and certainly some social justice issues. On the other side, Dan is a very pragmatic kind of guy, a nuts and bolts kind of guy. So each of those has qualities. Of course, not of course, but I favor Aaron. I think his qualities will propel Rhode Island into a new future. He's young. He's got that drive and that passion. He's well respected in the legislature, both on the House and the Senate side. He's able to push through bills, and I think as a lieutenant governor, he'd be great. Along with Aaron, if I get in that next seat to his right or left as governor, that team, I think, will really move Rhode Island into a much better place.
In your space, in your voice, Matt Brown is dancing either thinking about running as a Democrat. We had him on, I think, the first day. He made some noise about it. He was on with Kate Nagel, our news editor, and now he wants to run as an independent, may run as a Democrat. What's your sense of his candidacy, and where did he come from? I mean, we all knew him 20 years ago, but he sort of parachuted out of nowhere. We haven't seen him.
Yeah, I haven't seen him for at least 3 years. And
3 years. I was going to go 20.
20 years. 20 years is
15
good.
15 years, something.
Somewhere between 3 and 20 is the truth. But anyway, somewhere along the line, he disappeared and hasn't come back. I haven't talked to him straight.
Do you see him out and about at events?
No. I'm just about the only candidate who gets out there. I haven't seen him. I have good working relationships with all of them. When I started this race, one of the things I wanted to make sure I did was to get to know the other players, not from an opponent or competitive side, but to know their psyche, to know their strengths.
Find their weaknesses.
To know their strengths, because we all
Key
live.
debate opportunities. Are you like Matt Damon in that, where he's like, that guy's left-handed, he's got a knife in his boot, that sort of thing?
Because we all live under the same sky, we all breathe the same air. And I found it to be both an exciting part of running, to know the other folks. I've met Luis Daniel Munoz, Giovanni Ferrosci. Giovanni and I talk a lot every once in a while about environmental issues, energy issues, business issues. That's been a really exciting conversation. Bill Gilbert of the Moderate Party, Spencer Dickinson. I know.
Is Bill Gilbert announced?
The Moderate Party, from what I understand.
Yeah. I don't
Bill,
think we've received anything from them.
Bill can certainly talk about this for himself. They haven't.
Sure.
They haven't announced a candidate, but they want to. They want to field a candidate.
And why wouldn't they recruit you or recruit one of the other candidates who are already running? I mean, they sort of did that with Bob Healy. They kind of pulled him out at the last minute and injected him into the race.
Injected him in. He got 20% pretty much just showing up.
Yeah.
Which is, that's what
Have you thought about the beard? Have you thought about growing out the beard?
No.
You've got enough time to get it down to about...
I'm not going to grow out the beard, no. One of the great things about Rhode Island is that we have some really exquisite talent. We do, and I'm not pandering, but it really is amazing on the business side, the philosophical side, the value-driven side, the nonprofit side, and spiritual, and a whole bunch. We have some exquisite people here, and I think maybe it's because of the water we drink, or it's because of the educational institutions that are here. We're all products. Just about everybody who is in this race is a product of some part of the educational system here at Brown, whether it be URI or Brown University or a host of other colleges and universities, high schools, and everything else.
Let me jump over to one other issue. The governor's had a very difficult time in relationships with the legislative leaders, depending on the week. I think it's no secret the public fights she's had, especially with Speaker Mattiello.
Sure.
And it seems detrimental to getting things done at any level. That the two of them just don't have a working, functional
there's no
relationship.
Rapport. There's no working relationship or working rapport with them. And I think that not only holds us back, but it prevents us from really looking ahead. Things like women's reproductive rights should have been an easy sell.
Right.
Should have been easy on both issues, and it got hammered, and walls were built. Until now, here we are near the very end of the legislative session, and there's hearings and the codifying Roe versus Wade legislation, and might happen this year. I'm a big supporter of reproductive rights. Certainly, our energy policy, our policy when it comes to the environment, business regulations, small business regulations, to me, all should have been easy sells over these last 3 years, and they've been hard. Look what happened last year. Mattiello said, well, picked up all his marbles and left. He said, we're done.
Right.
I'm out of here.
Let's go rapid fire.
Yeah,
thumb up or thumb down on these to wrap up. PawSox funding scheme.
Yeah, PawSox funding, it's too valuable a property, too valuable a location to put a ballpark there. Thumbs
so you're
down.
no. Okay.
Thumbs down.
Let's go over to UHIP. Should Deloitte be fired?
Yeah, Deloitte should be fired. Deloitte should have been fired from day one. If it didn't happen then, it's not going to happen now.
The governor's got in the budget, it's dependent on a United States Supreme Court decision to expand gambling in a very significant way. It really hasn't gotten the attention because this is a big game changer.
Sure.
It's locked into the budget at around $23 million. Expansion of sports gaming, up or down?
Yeah, absolutely down.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't need it.
Let's go. I think I know your position on Invenergy.
Down. Thumbs down. Thumbs down. Hearings start next week. It'll take us till Halloween before we get to some type of final decision. In my humble opinion, next year at this time, we'll still be here talking about Invenergy.
An area we've covered a ton of has been the chaos in the hospital industry right now. You've got Care New England fledgling financially, partners coming out of Boston. Is that a good idea to have partners come down? This is one of our largest employers. I think it's the third largest private employer. Does that need to be looked at hard?
It needs to be looked at from a stakeholder point of view. As of right now, there are no people who are actually getting the benefits, whether it be Medicaid, Medicare, just normal health care plans, Blue Cross, United Health, whatever it is. Nobody's on those study commissions. Nobody's on those panels. And I'm on Medicare. I'm on a single payer. I believe in Dr. Fine. Dr. Fine, if you're looking,
we have him regularly.
Support you regularly every chance I get. We need a single payer healthcare system. We can do it in Rhode Island.
Anything else you want to say while you're on?
You bet. www.paulrosselli.com. I need a lot of support. There's a race to be had, and I'm in the race. I'm in the race. I need 1,000 signatures to get on the ballot. I'm going to make sure that happens. I'm going to go all the way to September with the support of all the folks here who've been supporting me since November of last year. We can make this happen. We can win. We can take this to November. Our governor cannot win in November. That's the problem. So if you don't want, if you want some other type of party in that main seat in the State House, then you got to vote for me.
Paul, we're big fans of everybody who jumps in the arena and runs for election. I want to thank you again for coming on. Keep us up to date.
You bet.
Keep the information flowing. We're going to be right back at the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center with our columnist, our favorite, Bob Whitcomb. We'll be right back. Thanks, everybody. Welcome back to Go Local Live. It is Friday. The sun is shining in Providence, Rhode Island. It's a miraculous occasion.
For about 15 seconds.
About 15
followed
seconds.
by hurricane force winds and torrential rain.
And it's warmed up to 45,
right.
50
Yeah,
degrees.
right.
Welcome to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. You just heard one of the gubernatorial
I did, yeah, very
aspirants.
very well spoken. And as I was telling him, I admire anybody who gets out and runs. It is a tough job. The population is cynical, angry, confused, and anybody who gets out there in what Theodore Roosevelt called the arena, has got my admiration. I think we're far too cruel to politicians as a class.
Yeah.
Of course, there's certain individuals that should be incarcerated. But, and I'll give you a list after the show.
So we're in a very, we're in a new era of politics, and we're in a new era of covering politics.
That's right.
We had a story this week about who's covering politics, and arguably there are literally more candidates for governor than there are journalists in Rhode Island covering all the statewide races.
Because the implosion of the so-called legacy media, that's the main thing, the TV stations, but especially Providence Journal. And it's very sad, and no one's really worked this out. GoLocal's doing creative things and cross-promotion or looking at media in a different way, much more flexible ways, but nobody has completely cracked this nut yet. And as you know, I've been in this since sort of the beginning. And nobody has it, nobody quite knows how to do it yet.
Is there a little danger in a democracy, right?
Yeah.
There's about 8 reporters who are of a senior level that know what they're doing. That are
around here,
around in the state of Rhode Island.
Yeah, so call it
call it 10.
Upper middle-sized metros area.
Right.
Yeah.
So you got 8 to 10 reporters who are going to be covering these races. They need to cover the governor's race. They need to cover 3 congressional races. A very high charge lieutenant governor's races,
right.
all the other down tickets, key legislative races.
Yeah, you've got
Mayor
all
of
these
Providence.
legislative races, and of course, who controls the legislature sort of runs the state. But how do you cover this stuff? The Providence Journal, as did other papers, other good papers like it, mostly closely held, family owned.
Right.
They had bureaus in every other town.
Yeah.
I can remember there were like 5 or 6 people in the Fall River Bureau. They covered Boston well.
I don't know if we've talked about that.
Yeah,
At one
right.
point, there were 9 reporters and 2 editors in Pawtucket, and 3 of those reporters in Pawtucket went on to win Pulitzer Prizes. Simultaneously, three of the 9.
Well, it was a great feeder. The Providence Journal was a great feeder place. Some people stayed here because they like living around here, but a lot of these people, I'd go and see people at the New York Times, and where I did some work, and you'd see all these people from here. This was probably the leading feeder newspaper in the United States, and you can also get the legacy broadcast stations. Back when Bruce Sunland was running the Outlet Company, Channel 10, now sort of part of the Trump organization.
Sinclair Broadcasting.
Sinclair Broadcasting. They did a pretty good job. I mean, TV is just sort of a headline service.
Absolutely.
You know. That's the like
and
GoLocal.
And they want film.
Yeah, right. And they did a pretty responsible job, pretty thorough job. I can remember working a little bit for WHDH up in Boston, which was a TV station, a radio station, which, you know, I got tangled up because the Herald Traveler, you know, had the license, the broadcast, and they lost it. And they had, each had 15 or 20 journalists.
Right.
You know.
So you know, as we progress through this campaign, you know, we had a story today about the governor kind of switching up data.
Oh, about the jobs.
Jobs numbers.
Let's talk about that. Yeah, I think probably they'd be better just kind of kept a very low profile of that. The amounts.
And it was insignificant.
Insignificant. Yeah, the best is in that, I know this isn't very Trumpian, but to kind of underplay stuff like that. And if you make a mistake in the statistics, and the statistics change every month, every week, then, you know, revise it. All this stuff is revised. In fact, the month before stuff was revised. And don't crow about minor changes. Don't take credit for minor adjustments, which are really, even in a small state like Rhode Island, really like rounding errors. The thing we were talking about, the green room, the 500 jobs, that's a rounding error.
Well, it's funny, the governor...
Even in Rhode Island.
You know, if you use the data that has been used for as long as we've been in existence, the state was only down 500. The governor decided to choose, her office decided to choose a different data point. It was up 700. Massachusetts reported today that functionally they were flat. They were up 4,700 jobs because Baker's kind of got it all in perspective. There's no win or loss on a monthly jobs number.
Baker is quite careful about that stuff. Of course, he's not under the pressure that the governor is here in a very tight race.
Right.
Again, I think, I sort of agree with my friend Scott McKay on that's, I think, her biggest problem is she doesn't come across well on television. I hate to sound superficial, but it's the real world. And so she's got this problem. She may be, you know, run again from the left, and there's still a lot of animosity against her from the public employee unions about the pension stuff. But even though I don't think she had any alternative, there's a wonderful long story article in the New York Times last few days, maybe a week ago, about pension disasters around the country. Did you see that?
Yeah.
And it should make, actually, Rhode Islanders feel slightly better. Some states are in much worse shape. Oregon is a catastrophe. Total catastrophe.
Isn't some of their objection, which was that it just wasn't equitable, right?
It didn't seem fair.
Judges didn't get touched. State police didn't get touched.
High-level people.
In many cases.
That's true in most states. When they fix these things.
And didn't hit municipalities, and it didn't. And in the cases of state police, judges, etc., they didn't make contributions in the first place. So you know,
they didn't pay into this grotesquely underfunded thing. And of course, also the whole country was going on the assumption there'd be 8% growth every year.
That hasn't worked out so well.
No, it hasn't worked out well at all.
It's
sort of like the housing crisis. The assumption was for about 20 years that housing prices always go up. I actually looked at the numbers. Actually, housing prices often go down for long stretches. I know they're surging now. GoLocal has had very good coverage of this. But if you look at the period from the mid-1920s, for example, to about 1960, they went down during a lot of that.
I think USA Today had a few weeks ago, over the 30-year cycle, really it was only a net of a couple percentage points.
It's what the statisticians call return to the mean.
Yeah, right.
So there's a lot of misunderstanding. I'm already hearing that again. I've been through about 5 cycles as a business center where the real estate prices go up all the time. We're seeing it in Rhode Island now, and it's going up, what is it, 13% or something?
13% year over year. I mean, it's really, especially on the east side of Providence, it's hyper price increase.
Affluent market. Brown University expanding. Also, it's sort of the exception that proves the rule in a way. There are a lot of people there around where I live where they're commuting to Boston.
Right.
Somewhat high-paid Fidelity executives, money managers, tech people.
Well, because it's low cost here.
Yeah, right.
Which brings us to Amazon. You forwarded a piece. You've got. It's looking like more and more Washington, D.C. metro area. Probably Northern Virginia near Dulles is the now X zone, and Boston as being the 2 leading locations for HQ2.
The final 2, maybe.
50,000 jobs. Transformative for generations to come of what the impact of this.
And they would go to the seaport. That'll be like setting up your corporate headquarters in Venice.
And in both cases, neither has the transportation infrastructure to even partially deal with their existing.
You heard about the monorail idea? Did you read that? I put it in one of my ramblings.
Yes. From
South Station to Seaport, because they can go over the flooded streets.
And
the GE headquarters. But the beltways, no. I was, as you know, I was just in Washington last weekend. The beltway is a nightmare. So
I lived there 20-something years ago.
I know you
and it was bad then. Now it is.
It's unbelievable.
It might be the worst congestion area. We've written about this issue. We poked at the issue of great, 50,000 high-paid folks.
Right.
A lot of them are going to come down and buy in Providence. But there's a negative impact to it, right? It's going to push prices up in demand.
Well, we need more housing. As I said, we need a return to the triple-decker. And I thought of this with the Agawam thing. Now, that's very nice.
Right. They
nice
bought the development rights.
And all that. But this is another case, the Nature Conservancy doing things which tends to help the rich.
Yeah.
All over the country. Like they'll buy 500 acres next to, the Koch brothers estate or something like that. More buffer. The Nature Conservancy, in many places, not everywhere, has acted as kind of a protective thing. In this case, this is an unusual case, though, because they're taking over the thing. And the neighborhood that the Agawam is, a lot of it's middle to lower middle class, very modest.
Yeah, one houses. Side it's sort of middle class, upper middle class.
Closed
the other
mill
side
up the street. It's a very interesting case, and I think it's a good thing and all that. It's close to the urban core, but all I could think of was that you could put about 100 houses there. We have a terrible housing shortage in Rhode Island.
Wall Street Journal had a piece, I want to say a month ago. We've been trying to schedule a time for the builders to come on. And it was the lowest, it's the lowest rate of new building starts in the last 50 years in the United States.
And here we are
at a time in a
some way, sort of a boom. Low unemployment.
Absolutely.
Right. And previous years, the stuff would be popping up all
And
over
the takeaway was 2 things. One, the millennials changing behavior relative to first homes. The second was that there's so much regulation, that there's so many restrictions, that there's so little land.
Well, there's a lot of snob zoning.
Yeah.
A lot of it. There was something came up with, in Exeter, about solar and stuff. They don't want anybody.
No.
They don't want anybody. They do. They're in favor of green energy as long as it's produced some other place.
It is one of the most amazing things. I think this is the most perplexing one. Folks who have lived who are liberal in thought have just died to get renewable energies to be economically viable. We are now here. And the green energy market is facing obstacles morning, noon, and night.
Jess is they're fixing the battery problem.
Absolutely.
I talked to Jim Gordon the other day. There's a big conference down in Boston. Batteries. That was they're making these huge breakthroughs. Now we can't put these things up. As you know, Gordon gave up the Nantucket Sound thing.
He did just fine. I think he just sold the biomass.
Well, you know where he made his first pile.
Yes.
Natural gas, 100 million. Yeah, yeah.
We
he
don't
chuckles
need,
about it.
right.
Yeah.
We don't
Biomass.
need, we do not need to cry for Jim Gordon.
No, Jim will be okay. He'll be okay.
Right.
No,
Is he making the mortgage payment this month?
I think he's doing it, yeah.
Okay,
in
great.
his very lovely house in Beacon Hill, which I've been at. It's a spiral staircase.
Perfect location for GoLocal Boston.
Right, that's right. World headquarters.
That's right. Let's talk a little bit about the governor's race is beginning now.
You're right.
We're 7 months
People
out.
People haven't really focused on him.
But the campaigns are, and they're starting to chirp at each other. What do you see? How do you see this race? Is it totally going to be decided on Gina Raimondo? Is this the only question?
I think so. I think partly unfairly, because I think she's done some good things. There's been no huge scandals. She had a terrible time with the benefits thing, but that's not the only state.
Yeah.
Rhode Island's not the only state where that happened. There are catastrophes.
Is the problem though with warmer, cooler UHIP is that people voted for her because they thought she was competent.
Right.
And then these two issues, and listen, they could happen to anybody.
They
both
happen,
of them.
and have
but
happened
how they
around
got
the country.
handled, right?
Yes.
In both cases, she denied that there were issues.
Well, I think again, it's a stylistic thing. I think she can seem, what's the right word? Know-it-all. I don't find her that way in person, but technocratic, cool, technocratic, and that doesn't work very well generally in Rhode Island.
No, Rhode Islanders want to touch and feel.
And in person, she's very personable. You've met her plenty of
Listen,
times.
I scheduled for early in my career, I scheduled for John Chafee. And if somebody invited him to their son's Eagle Scout ceremony, they were really disappointed if John Chafee didn't show up at their son's
and talk to
Eagles.
everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she's cooler. She's very self-disciplined. So I think that's part of her problem. I think part of it is can still angry union people from the pension thing.
Right.
Partly because they were deprived of money they've been planning on, partly because of the perception of inequity. And I think certainly the cooler, warmer thing, even though I think that's sort of a joke. I think that's pretty much faded. The UHIP thing has been very difficult. And when I tell people, people in the administration say, "Oh, that happened," and Deloitte screwed things up here and there, they don't want to hear it. Rhode Islanders, in that sense, are very insular. They don't care what's happening in even New Hampshire. That's a similar problem.
But to some degree, why should they, right?
Yeah,
we voted for her.
Yeah,
Listen, she literally has the best resume
Yeah.
of maybe any person in the United States of America. If you add up all the things that she has accomplished by her age. I mean, it's right there,
she's
male or female.
Almost like the guy in Missouri, also very impressive. I have his book, by the way. So
He's in a little trouble right now.
Yeah, I mean,
this is the governor of Missouri who is
sex
now
scandal, now financial scandal,
black extorting
finance.
The woman that he was having an affair with.
Yeah,
and
I
now
think he was a
there's
Rhodes Scholar too. It's a very violent group of people. These Rhodes Scholars.
Bill Clinton.
Right. So, but yeah, I think
I am so glad I was not selected for a Rhodes Scholar.
no, it's very dangerous. No, I think it'll be about her and her personality, the tone of her administration, which to many people seems too distant. I think that's a problem. It's
Why doesn't she
difficult
get
to
credit?
check.
When you drive around, there are buildings being built.
All these vacant lots have been whining about for 30 years. They're getting filled up. The unemployment rate, I mean, it's not as good as Massachusetts, but what state is other than what, New Hampshire or something?
It's 4.5%, which is functionally almost zero.
That's right. It's
now, Gary
Sass
will say, listen, the new jobs that have been created, on average, 40% of them are under $40,000. So these
that's true, of course, for the United States.
Yeah.
Obviously. But there have still been some pretty good new jobs created in spots. Like I thought the Brown Brain thing, the 100 million bucks. I mean, more people are being hired for that. There'll be spin-offs from that too, Josh. As you know, medical device, pharmaceutical. But this is a relatively small number of people. It's sort of like the relatively small number of people who work for Facebook and Google.
John Donahue's, I think now in Switzerland working for a concern over there, but John Donahue deserves a lot of credit from taking a tiny, non-existent brain science center at Brown University 25, 30 years.
Butlers are connected to Butlers.
And has blown this thing up to be one of the
It's now a sort of global center. And this is huge because of the aging of the population.
Absolutely.
Huge thing. There Alzheimer's, obsessive compulsive disorder, Parkinson's, you name it.
This
So
might be
is a
one
good
of the
thing.
biggest things that happened
It
this year.
is.
Right.
I think the press, in fact, could have given more context to it. Very important. It'll connect it to the huge complex in Boston and
Absolutely.
stuff like that, which gets back to my Amazon stuff. I think what you're going to find is you're going to find people from here going up to work there who want to live here because it's more affordable. And, you know, it's nice if you have a certain income. It's a very nice place to live. But I think they'll get some design work, too. The one thing that Rhode Island has a national, international reputation is design stuff. And Amazon's going to need more design people.
And we do produce a fair amount of engineers between Brown and URI.
Right. Yeah, URI and Brown are distinguished engineering schools.
Let's
right?
jump to Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Former FBI Director Comey came out with his book.
Oh, boy.
He's done a series of interviews. My takeaway from that is no one's very pleased with him, neither on the right or on the left.
It's so complicated.
He is not distinguished them. And where it breaks down for me as the consumer is his explanation of reopening or announcing the opening of the investigation
Week and a half or so
a week and a
before the
half
election.
before,
Yeah, yeah.
and saying, and his
That lost in
explanation
the
is,
election, in my view. It was so close. Without a doubt.
without a doubt.
Without a doubt.
And his
yeah.
explanation is, well, I thought she was going to win the election, so it wouldn't matter.
And you know, he was under huge pressure from anti-Clinton people, the FBI, including in the Southern District,
Absolutely.
New York. The FBI never liked the Clintons. This
Right.
goes way back. The FBI has always leaned Republican.
Right.
And they couldn't stand them, and he came under tremendous pressure to put that out. He shouldn't have done it. It was a mistake. He sort of semi-admits
When
it
has
now.
there ever been, not just an FBI director, a secretary of a department that has ever uttered such words that I made a decision one way or the other way because I did a test of what the election outcome would be in 10 days away, and that allowed me the flexibility as an individual.
I agree, Josh, but we've never had an election campaign like that. I think everyone was very confused. I mean, he also, in the July before, he sort of hit her over the, you know, hit her hand for the being sloppy. Of course, now we know they're all sloppy. Pence's emails are out there all the time. He probably shouldn't have done that, or he should have used fewer adjectives. My view is that he was much of this was pressure from within the FBI. You know, they never liked the Clintons. They didn't like the way the Clintons treated them.
But okay, you're the head of the FBI.
Yeah.
You're the guy.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean,
you're supposed to be straight.
Isn't it
rectitude.
just failed leadership?
I agree. And he should have acted as sort of a semi-judicial position. Should have been very cool. Fewer words, the better. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. He talks too much. He talks too much.
Listen.
You can't accuse Mueller of talking too much. Talk about the great stone face. He's like that, you know, up in New Hampshire. You know.
He's done an that fell down
they
too.
fell down. Yeah, they even look. It's very similar. You see the profile and everything. Yeah.
That has not been a leak machine. Mueller's investigation. Where are we in this? Does anybody have any idea? Are we at the beginning of the beginning?
I think my hunch is that Mr. Trump will not serve out his term. Now, whether
his first term.
Yes, that's right, his first term.
Kate Nagel had
Stormy
on
Daniels, the New York City corruption. You know, you've got two or three parts to this. You've got the Russia stuff, and you see the Democrats are suing. That's more of a publicity stunt before the midterms. You know, they're suing the Republican Party, WikiLeaks. Well, that'll scare them. Julian Assange and the Russians.
What are they going to turn off his cable in the Ecuadorian?
Suing Russia, you know, the chief of hacking in Russia. But I think that there's just so much stuff that goes back so long. That is my hunch. I could be totally wrong. I did, however, I don't know if you remember, think there was a very good chance that he was going to be elected. After my trip through the South, I said, hey, this, you know, talking to people in diners and stuff.
Absolutely.
So, but that's my hunch. He's just got too much baggage, but it might not be the Russia thing.
Right. Absolutely.
But yeah, Comey is too, he talks too much.
While all this is going on and Trump is in chaos and the Republicans seem to be under fire, but
they're doing okay. They still got their base.
Where is the Democratic leadership at a national level? Who is the candidate who is going to?
I see no one at the moment. They have some very presentable Hickenlooper, kind of good-looking, well-spoken guy, governor of Colorado.
Right.
and a close friend of John Kasich.
Yeah.
Well, they were even talking about running together. Do you
Right.
know that?
Yeah.
He's plausible, but I mean, who else? No, I don't see anybody in Congress. What, Chuck Schumer? I don't think so. I don't think they're going to vote for another person from New York.
Well, right.
Well,
we're good.
Kirsten Gillibrand, who's sort of a tough customer, but she's got.
When are the Democrats going to learn that that New York, California, Massachusetts, you know, liberals? I mean, I don't know if you're allowed to use that word anymore. You have to call them progressives, but. There's potentially 5 different candidates with Massachusetts, right? One of the Kennedys.
The redhead, the lipstick guy.
Right.
Joe Kennedy.
Deval Patrick is looking at it. Elizabeth Warren's looking at it.
No, they need some guy from Youngstown, like the congressman from Youngstown, who is taking on Mrs. Pelosi, the Speaker. And if she were a real profoundly loyal to the party, she would say, "I will, step down." This, and then get.
And he's smart and presentable.
Oh yeah, very well spoken. Get somebody.
And usually, congressmen from Youngstown are indicted by this time.
Yeah, usually by the time they're 11 or something. That's right. But you need somebody from like Ohio or something.
Right.
It could be a woman too, but. Somebody about 45 years old, well-spoken, and could radiate some empathy for the blue-collar people. I think, and there are people like that in Congress, but none of them at the national level. That's another reason why Pelosi should get out of the way. They should get the hook for her, and then they can develop somebody. The next Democratic House Speaker could be their candidate. Otherwise, you've got this very well-meaning, nice guy with a funny name, Hickenlooper.
Right.
I don't know.
Listen, if we've elected Barack Obama while Bin Laden was on the loose,
a few years after he's a state senator.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
So I think there's still a huge vacuum. It could be Bill Cuomo's not going to make it. Too much baggage in New York and this corruption stuff. So
let's jump back to the governor's races to wrap up. To change the narrative on how people perceive her, does Governor Raimondo need to fire Deloitte? Is that one of those things? There's no good solution.
Because the conveyor belt is moving on that project. That's the trouble. Very difficult to do. I think she can. I mean, we're all stuck with how we look and the timbre of our voice and everything, but I think she could. Her advisors could change her presentation style. Part of the problem is she's a very small person, and that makes it more difficult. Well, it sounds unfair, but
I also think people have a tenor of period of time in which they can be in the forefront.
Right.
And because she was a treasurer who was almost a governor.
Oh yeah.
Right?
And she became a national figure.
Absolutely.
Our friend Philip Howard,
sure.
He's our hero.
Right, and she's now 8 years in.
Yeah.
Right? She's been in the forefront from 8 years.
And a national figure.
Right.
To some extent during that
And
time.
Rhode Islanders have always resented that when they read an article in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, they're like, that's not the person we know. That kind of seems to be the takeaway. Yeah. And don't really like the national press. Like, come fix some things here, and then you
fix
can
the
get
bridge.
Right.
This bridge is collapsing.
Right.
I didn't get my food stamps.
Right.
Or that you didn't visit the old folks home. So I think she has to change her presentation. It's difficult. I mean, we're all stuck with what we are. And I think certainly the TV presentation, I know that sounds superficial, but this is real life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody talks about Bruce Sullivan, really very effective governor. In my view, a great governor.
Yeah.
I mean, John Chafee, Bruce, great governor, and I think Gina in some ways come across as strong. But look at Bruce, he did tough things. He was ousted by
and got crushed.
Some state senator. It was a catastrophe. Right. And then he voted for Link Common, he told me both times, which is a true story, and proud of it. So she's got, I think, more than, I don't think she can fire Deloitte at this point. It would just
too late.
The whole thing would unravel even faster.
If that's possible.
And I think it's really, it's a show business problem. As unfair as that is,
Thank you as always.
Thank you.
We're going to wrap things up for the week. It has been a busy, busy week here at GoLocal. We've had 2 concerts, been up at the State House. I think we probably had 30 interviews. Want to thank everybody for tuning in. Have a great weekend. We'll be back on Monday. I'll be back with Business Monday. I have a jam-packed lineup on Monday. Have a great weekend. Thank you from the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. We are out for the weekend. Thanks so much.